president of the Music Biz Association. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hi, Deborah. I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, we are so excited. I know I met you at Music Biz, I think 4 years ago. You were moderating a panel, and now you're the president.
Isn't that crazy? And now we both live here, which is so weird.
That's so great. That's true. Nashville native.
Yeah. So it's fun to be here. I never thought I would move to Nashville. I never thought I'd be the president of Music Biz. So
I know that's actually really what we wanted to talk about is kind of your story and where you came from. I know you were a drummer in New York in a band, right?
Yeah, I was a drummer in a band in New York in the 90s, which is dating me. And I played drums in that band. We made some records and went on tour and sort of got signed to an indie label and did all that stuff. And then in 2001, my band ended and I decided to take that tiny bit of knowledge that I had about music business and become an artist manager, which is hilarious when I look back on it. Cause it was like, I had this much knowledge, but I was like, I can help my friends. Yeah. So I started managing bands and that, I did that for several years and it was hard, really challenging. I learned a lot about the business, at that point in my life. And then I got lucky. I ended up working with a band called The Gossip and they ended up going gold in the UK. So I had that whole experience of signing them to a major label, signing them to a major publishing deal, kind of going through, like we literally went from, an underground band that not that many people knew about, but the people who knew about them loved them, but not to literally number 7 on the top 10 chart in like
amazing
less than a year. So it was just like crazy. And we had like paparazzi chasing us down the street on motorcycles. Like it was bananas. So that was an exciting experience.
Yeah.
And then right at that same time, my husband, who runs a record label called Kill Rock Stars, he decided he wanted to do something different. So he asked me if I would take over the label. So I did. So I took it over in 2006 and I ran it for 13 years. And then I started my new job as president of the Music Business Association at the end of 2019. And, for those of your listeners who are familiar with Music Biz, we usually historically have had an annual conference in Nashville in May. So I came in September and we were gearing up for this conference and instead we got a pandemic. So
crazy.
No conference. It was quite a year last year as it was for everybody.
Yeah.
But we managed to pivot and we ended up we had 41 virtual events in 2020.
That is amazing. So, I recommended a handful of them. They were really good. I can't believe it was all pulled together so quickly.
Neither can we. It was very like everything was very last minute. And so 2021, we're really excited because we're staying virtual, but we have a new platform that we're using and it's really interactive and cool. There's like a networking lounge where people can go and you're like a little avatar and you can go up to somebody else and then you pop into a room together so you can have a conversation. Like it's much more interactive and hands-on. So we're really excited about that for 2021 because we think it's still really important to get information out and have our community be able to come together somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're still not live, but we wanted to give them something a little bit more professional than Zoom.
Well, and since we have you here, for our users who may be new to the industry and things like that, is Music Biz, are there any free things that they can take advantage of, or do they have to be a full member, or what could that look like for?
Oh, yeah, that's a good question. We do a free event on the first Monday of every month. I think it's the first Monday or next Monday. It's called Music Biz Live. And it's usually an interview with some high-level executives, usually folks who are like sort of right at the cutting edge of things that are happening. Mm-hmm. Actually, last night we just did our one for February. It's Black History Month, and we did 3 people who were on the Billboard Change Agents list last month with me. I was actually on that list too, which was awesome.
That's great.
And we talked about how we're going to, how racial justice and equality is going to come to the music industry, like how we're going to make that happen.
That is so cool. So they can just go to the Music Biz website and sign up through that and join those.
Absolutely. Yep. Musicbiz.org, and you can go and just sign up for our newsletter, and the newsletter has all the stuff in it that we're doing.
Okay, perfect. And then they can apply, like if there's indie labels or things like that, or managers, they could also join, right? Like there's not really a, like,
Oh
how
yeah.
does this work?
So we're a membership organization for everybody who deals with the commerce of recorded music. That's like the easiest way for me to put it. So that would be all the labels, the publishers, the DSPs like Spotify and Apple, et cetera, Pandora, Facebook, they're all members. And then the producers, managers, artists who are hands-on and, get it that this is a business. The retailers, because historically we were the retailers trade association. So all the indie stores and the distributors and the one-stops, and the aggregators in the physical world. Mm-hmm. And then tech companies. So the music tech folks, the people who are working in the music tech space, like you guys who are bringing great stuff to the music business.
Yeah, I definitely want people to know more about the Music Biz Association, everything that they do, because it's definitely helped VEVA and it's helped me just learning about new things and networking and people. I really miss the live in-person aspect, but I know it'll come back. It'll come back soon.
Yeah, we're getting there. We're getting there slowly but surely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, one thing, I know you know what we do and things like that, but one thing, since our focus is credits, something that we're asking everyone their own perspective is, why do you think accurate credits are so important? Like, does it really matter? Does it not matter? That sort of thing.
It matters more than anything else. And like, this is actually the part of the music business that it bears repeating over and over again, because this is the unsexy part. I feel like when being in the music business, other than movies or something, we're like the sexiest business, it like seems really glamorous, superstars and, walking red carpets and all this fun stuff that we sometimes a tiny fraction of the time get to do.
Right.
Like that makes it seem really glamorous. But the bottom line is none of that matters if you don't have an income stream, right? You can't be an artist. You can't be a successful musician if you don't get paid for what you do ultimately. Mm-hmm. And so having your credits correct is like the absolute foundation that everything else is built on. I mean, you can walk as many red carpets as you want. If your bank account is empty because you're not getting paid for what you did for your work, it's totally useless. And when I ran a label for 13 years, that was something that I really tried to impress on artists all the time was, I know that sometimes doing art is spontaneous and it's always really fun. So mm-hmm. You're in the studio, you're in the moment, you're not thinking about like commerce, you're not thinking about making money. And that's totally fine. You don't have to be like that as an artist.
Right.
But like the next day or, when if you have a manager or like somebody in your life who's sort of more the business minded person, it's like, you have to make sure that you get that down, because I've been in that situation. I mean, I've told you the story before because I'm so embarrassed, but it's like when I looked at the album that we put out in 2001, so 20 years ago. So we recorded that like 21 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I remember the studio and I don't remember the guy's name who recorded it. I don't remember the name of the studio. I think it was in Brooklyn, but I'm not 100% sure. Like, yeah, it's crazy what you forget, right? Yeah. And when people's livelihoods depends on remembering, thank God there was nobody on that album but the three of us. So it's like nobody got stiff, but it's like, I could totally see that being like, if we'd had somebody come in and play a trumpet on one song, mm-hmm. I wouldn't remember who that person was. And I wouldn't know how to get in touch with them to get them their money. So credits at the source at the time of recording are like absolutely critical to this whole endeavor. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's a great answer. And also someone I met and got really close with the music biz, with Xtra. I know they're doing a lot with credits online and things like that. So we always like to give them a shout out when people are saying, well, maybe Spotify doesn't have full credits or Tidal has some credits, but not everything. That's a really cool company that people can check out for full credits and things like that. Do you know of someone that got miscredited or didn't get, they worked on something yet they're not represented anywhere? Are there any like shout outs for people like that
Yeah. I mean, I have a friend who does, what do you call it? It's like, it's similar to studio work. She's like a studio vocalist. So people will hire her to just do vocals on a track.
Yeah.
And the background of all of this is like a web of rights and a web of, permissions and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But in her case, she has a license agreement that she writes up an agreement with whoever hires her to do vocals. And on that, it says she gets a flat fee plus a percentage of, sales and money,
yeah.
right? Well, she found out that this song that she had sung vocals on was like a huge hit in Italy, which is yet another part of our situation because the music business is now completely global thanks to the internet, right?
Right, right.
And she was getting nothing, not a cent, So that's a really good example of, it's like she had her paperwork, but she didn't have the credits on that piece, so that she had to be told by some third party that was what was happening with that. And, you hear stuff like that all the time in the music business. And especially nowadays with the number of writers on a track, the number of producers involved. And sometimes, a track will be going along and then, someone will be brought in to do something to that track. And it's like, we need to capture all of that so that everybody gets paid for their work, because this really isn't, it's one thing to say something's a labor of love. And I think music is a labor of love for the most part, but we can't get paid like it's a labor of love. We have to get paid like it's labor.
Right. Yeah,
because otherwise we're not going to have talented musicians. We're going to lose people. And I have a bad feeling that this pandemic has probably put us in that situation heavily. I bet we've lost a lot of people who just say, something, I have to go get a desk job. I can't do this anymore.
Right. Isn't that heartbreaking? That really
is.
Yeah, it definitely is. And that was something that we just talk about internally with VEVA, how grateful we are that the labels that we work with are still putting out content and things like that. But are there any new things? I know being involved in music biz, you guys have access to so many different companies and ideas. Like, have you heard any in terms of like the tides changing or any new opportunities for people or kind of like a ray of hope? Is there anything that you've heard going on that is kind of an uptick of positivity? Or is everything still kind of in the COVID stalled phase?
That's a good question because, for business, I think it's been pretty much ticking along. Certainly sales of music are good. Streaming is very high. Mm-hmm. Even physical retail reported a very good year last year. The record store day drops were very successful. A human ingenuity and creativity always seems to prevail. People found amazing ways around the country to, have safe sales of records, to have people come into the stores safely and stuff like that. So there's definitely a lot of positivity around, being able to sell music. I think for artists, the difficulty for artists is that, a lot of their money is usually made touring. And so while the touring market is not happening, they are going to have to turn to other ways to make money or even like putting out more music, which actually I think has happened. And a lot of people have reported that that's really positive, that they've had more time to record more and put more stuff out. So, and build their audience and build their fan base. So that's really good. I just heard today that there's going to be a conference in person, an actual live conference in June. Mm-hmm. People talking about like a return to live touring.
Oh, wow.
So that's really interesting. I'm a little skeptical and concerned. Like, I don't know if June's going to be good enough, but then we just don't know, right? Like this whole thing could turn around tomorrow and we just don't know how it's going to be.
Right.
But that's something that I think a lot of artists are probably pretty excited about. Like if there's the chance that they can get back to live touring by the end of the year.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the last question that we have for you and for our users is, it does seem like you started, with the love of music, being a musician and then getting into management and all of that. What piece of advice would you give people starting out? Like, I'm just in the industry. How do you network? How do you even get a job, really?
You know, I think this is a big question that a lot of people really want to know the answer to. I would say networking is key. And by networking, I mean, like, really take opportunities to meet people. The music industry is big, but it's also really small. And the people who stick around in the music industry tend to know each other for years and years. I mean, you and I met 4 years ago on a panel, and now, like, here we are really working together and doing all this stuff. Like, and that's how that works. So you have to sort of, I always say, like, try to meet as many people, get outside your comfort zone, meet people that you wouldn't normally, you know, think that, you know, there's someone that you necessarily need to know, but you never know. Right. And also be super nice, because you're going to probably see that person in 10 years and, you know, maybe they're your boss all of a sudden. So, like, just be nice to people, you know, have a positive attitude, you know, create opportunities, think of everything as an opportunity to, you know, to get out there, and understand the industry as much as possible. So, you know, I always encourage, especially students and young people, like, if you get the opportunity to go do an internship at a publishing company or something, and you're like, well, I know for sure I want to do A&R, so I don't want to do that. You really you're going to need to understand publishing, even if you do A&R. Like, it's ultimately, like, every part of this industry is worth understanding. And it's a complicated industry, you know, and that's something that I think people also really need to get. Like, music from the outside seems so simple, especially with some of the ways technology has made it even simpler. Like, you can sit in your bedroom, you can write a song, you can upload it, and the next minute it's on Spotify, or like you're on TikTok or whatever. And it's just like instant. Yeah. But behind all that is a ton of knowledge and history about this industry. So, you know, I would say also be respectful of the music industry and, like, learn about it, because you're not the genius who's going to change everything. You know, you all these people walking and they're like, oh, you people are just stupid. You don't know what you're doing. Like, I'm going to make this happen. And those people come in and they, like, fizzle out in like 10 months. I've seen it happen over and over, because they're just like, oh my God, this is so much harder of an industry. There's so much more to understand than I thought, you know? And so it's like, be respectful. This is a complicated industry. Those of us who are in it, we have fun and we get to do fun things, but we're also not idiots. Like, we have to learn a lot and understand a lot.
That's very nice. Yeah. Taking the room in and listening, that is something that I missed about, you know, walking the halls of music biz and all that kind of stuff, and popping in and out of different rooms and meeting people and mingling and all of that. It's super fun. Yeah. Thank you for keeping the online presence going, because connecting us while we're also disconnected. I know you and your team have done a lot of work to keep that going. So I, for one, appreciate it. And I'm sure a lot of other people do as well. But thank you for joining this. And yeah, it's been great chatting with you.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to do anything for VEVA.
Oh, thank you, Portia. I appreciate that.